We had 3 supply vehicles with us that we had left in a compound further back to the east while we went and interfaced with the villagers. As we called those vehicles forward, our Afghan National Security Forces were with them in 4 Toyota Hiluxes, 2 in the front, 2 in the back, with the 3 supply trucks in the middle. As those supply trucks were traveling east and west to join us at our location, they were ambushed by a large anti-Afghanistan force.
Shots fired, and we kind of like looked at each other like, "Was that?" And then we heard some more gunfire, like, "Oh, okay." And that's our guys getting engaged by the enemy. So at that time, of course, just as I was about to eat my MRE, we throw our food down, and we got on our vehicles. We pretty much task organized and who's going, what pair, and we moved out. We surprised the enemy by not just going into their trap, their ambush line that they had set up for us. So what we did a bold flanking maneuver to the left, which caught them off guard, and the surprise was on them. Basically, we just did the basics, and with speed, surprise. I saw a combatant with a belt-fed weapon and a radio. I engaged him and controlled that individual by firing and killing him.
Traveling slowly along that wadi, an enemy fighter jumped up directly to the side of our vehicle, about 6 to 10 feet away, and he shot his AK-47 on automatic up the entire side of the vehicle, which hit the side of the truck. It hit the the driver's windshield. It hit the turret of the vehicle, and it also struck my gunner in the chest plate of his armor. My driver stopped and tried to back up a little bit to give the gunner a shot, and the gunner tried to get a shot but couldn't depress his weapon low enough due to the depth of the wadi. At that point in time, I got out of the vehicle, and just before I broke the front of the vehicle to jump in the wadi, I remembered that I had some grenades, so I stopped and grabbed a fragmentary grenade and threw it in the trench. When the grenade hit the trench, I could see the enemy fighter move south in the trench about 10 feet, so I at least knew what direction he was in. Once the grenade went off, I jumped in the trench, and that fighter was directly in front of me, whom I engaged. We were less than the width of this room from each other. So I mean, he was probably 15 feet away when I shot him. I had to reload my rifle, so while I was in the process of reloading, my driver had gotten out of the vehicle, so he was still on the high ground, approximately 6 feet above me. He identified an enemy moving from south to north in the same trench line, and he engaged that enemy. Once he shot at that fighter, I continued to clear down across that fighter and clear him equipment. Security vehicles, which were only Toyota pickups, had turned and actually assaulted into the ambush as soon as they had received the enemy fire. So they had actually turned south into the teeth of the ambush, but their vehicles were not armored at all and got chewed up very badly. That led to the Afghan National Security Forces dismounting and maneuvered. The ones on this side maneuvered over to this cemetery and a building that was nearby, and the ones on my side had maneuvered and gotten into a hole. In the meantime, I identified more friendly fighters who were in this well hole, approximately I'd say 7 meters around and only about 3 or 4 feet deep, and they're all just huddled in this hole, about 8 men. And I thought they may have a wounded man in there, so we pulled our truck forward to as close of a position as we could get to them without being it offered the most cover available for the flat terrain that we were dealing with, but still being engaged by the enemy and engaging them. At which point in time I got out of the truck and ran to the hole. It's about 30 meters, and got with the Afghan soldiers, and at which point I identified none of them were wounded. They were again they were just pinned down by the volume of fire that was coming over the top of that hole. When I came forward, our sister vehicle also came forward and moved up at a position near our vehicle, and at that same time Sergeant First Class Gonzalez's vehicle moved forward because they could see our truck moving forward, so they moved forward as well. This is where Sergeant First Classs Gonzalez then identified friendly fighters who were pinned down in this cemetery, and he took his subsequent action to recover those fighters. So he was forward on the left side from our perspective of the ambush.
To my left, I got to see some individuals, and I looked over and I'm like, why aren't they shooting back? And well, it's pretty. They're getting engaged pretty directly from their position. So at that time, I got off the vehicle, made my way around, and I pretty much told the gunner, "Hey, I'll be back." Kind of smiled at him because it was a good distance away. So made my way to their location. Prior to that, I gave them the hand arm signal too. Hey, come our way, we got you. And that was enough for them to come. So that's when I made the split decision to make that run.
He was forward on the left side from our perspective of the ambush, and my section was forward on the right side of the ambush, both encountering a similar situation where our friendly forces were simply pinned down by the fire and unable to move effectively. At this point, I couldn't articulate to the men. I explained to them I wanted half of them to come to my vehicle and half to go to Mr. Anderson's vehicle, which was behind us by this point. But they were really not in a position to be able to do that, or with the desire to do that. I asked for my interpreter to leave our vehicle. He ran to my location, and he spoke to them in Pashto and explained the same thing. They were again reluctant to move under such heavy fire. At that point in time, I simply grabbed a few of them and I pulled them up out of the hole with me, and I brought them to my vehicle and put them in the back of the truck. When I moved them, that kind of initiated the whole action. No one else wanted to stay in that hole if people were leaving it. That's when I felt the most exposed. That's when I felt the most likely that something could happen. The trip there wasn't that bad because it's a surprise. Nobody knows what you're doing yet. But once I was in that particular hole, the gig was up. Everybody out there on that battlefield could see what was happening. So the trip back was actually when I felt the most exposed, because I had to help get them into the truck. There was some weapons laying around on the ground that I didn't want to leave for the enemy. So I grabbed those and helped the Afghans, our counterparts, get them into the truck. And it was during that process that I felt the most likely that something could happen.
So I made my way to their location, going a little zigzagging my way up there, shooting as I was moving. Grabbed the guys and, hey, let's go. Covering them as they were moving back. So I was covering them from my position as they were moving back. Made it back to our truck, and I asked, hey, do we have everybody? And they gave me the thumbs up. I looked over again, and then some more pop up. I'm like, okay, no, that's not everybody. So again, I made the dash, the mad dash, and got to them and came back. And then third time, I looked over, and there was like more people. And of course, I was like, third time is not going to be a lucky time. So, made my way back. This time, that's probably what I should have done the first time, to just look around, make sure I had everyone. Looked around, make sure I had everybody, and nobody was back there. Made the back dash, and it was quite interesting because something told me to stop, and the Sergeant Pavlik even saw it. Bullets just came by my face, and I looked at him. He looked at me like, he kind of gave a phrase. can't say in public. But and then moved out. So that was, I'd say, the Lord was on my side that day. I have to say, after that day, they were devoted to the team. We built a bridge between us and them that was difficult to break. We showed them that, hey, we're not going to leave you behind, for one, and for two, we're here for the same reason.